My name is Mike Honholtz. I'm the worship arts pastor here at Vancouver Church. I've been married to my wife, Amber, for 14 years this fall. And we have 4 kids together, Hallie, who's 10, Tesley, 7, our one boy, Dempsey, who is 6, and our youngest daughter, who just turned 3 this last week, Nellie. I grew up in Vancouver, Washington, went to Evergreen High School. I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional home. I remember my parents always fighting constantly. My dad was an alcoholic. I remember many times him coming home from work and usually yelling at me and my younger brother, who's 2 years younger than me, yelling at my mom, and then eventually heading into the family room to watch TV and fall asleep. When I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. One story that has just always stood out to me is when I was about 13, I had this tic where I would spit. I didn't understand it. I would just spit on the carpet. I remember one night I was lying in bed, falling asleep and spitting, and my dad came barging through my room and just yelling, "That's it, get your stuff. We're getting rid of you." My mom woke up, my brother woke up, we're in the hallway crying. I'm in tears, 13 years old, what is going on? And I remember my dad threw me in our van. We drove across town. I was crying the whole time, spitting and crying and spitting. And we just parked somewhere. I think he just needed to cool off. And that was really, he didn't apologize. It just kind of ended there. And that was really kind of a taste of the world that myself and my brother grew up in. As I got into my college years, I really grew in my love for music. I found myself in my first worship pastor job at the age of 22. From there, I slowly started gaining some success in music. In the songs I was writing, I signed a publishing deal and a songwriting deal. And after about 6 years at Grace, I decided to pursue the traveling worship leader gig. Eventually ended up at a big church in Bellingham as the worship pastor for 5 years. And then from there ended up a few years at a church as the worship pastor in West Lynn. All along, I never really dealt with how my childhood had shaped and affected me. I was insecure, I was selfish, I was angry. I had really just bought into this lie that I needed to have it all together, especially as a pastor. My relationships suffered, my marriage suffered, and really I was wrestling even with my own faith. And as I look back, I like to say I had a lot of talent, but very little character. So in 2017, after 17 years of full-time vocational music ministry, I decided to take a break. I needed it. I didn't know if I'd ever come back. I just knew I needed it. I started seeing a counselor that was helping me walk through many issues of my own life. And little did I know that that year would really be the hardest year and really the most healing year of my life. I was wrestling with my own faith. I was struggling in my relationships. My wife was struggling. She was living in a loveless marriage. I found out that year my dad had 6 months to live, which that quickly turned into 2 weeks. And so it was just a crazy, hard year. And during that year, one of the things my counselor really helped me work through was that I had, in many ways, become like my dad in my relationships, in my marriage. I was present, but not present. The other thing that was just massive for me was that how I felt towards my dad, and I just didn't like him. I loved him, but I didn't like him, and it was really how my wife felt towards me. And it just gave me, it blew my mind, just that realization. And it also gave me grace for my wife in helping her through that. And it also even gave me grace for my dad, because I wanted my wife to love me. And I know my dad wanted me to accept and love him. And so it was just such a healing moment. So before my dad passed away, we had a pretty cool moment that I will never forget. There was a lot of tears shed. We embraced. He apologized for so much. of our childhood, and I was able to forgive him. And a few weeks later, he passed away, and there was just such a peace surrounding all of that. So life now is really night and day. I know it sounds cliche, but God has done a miracle in my heart. He's done a miracle in my marriage. My closest friends say I am just a completely different guy. My wife, which is the most important thing, says I am a completely different person. Our marriage is a whole new marriage. And I'm just so thankful for what God has done in my life, in our marriage, in my relationships. And it really took the hard work of opening up, being vulnerable, working through the things that I needed to work through in my own life, and really finding healing with my dad, and really with God. And so I'm just so grateful for the work that God has done, is doing, and I know that He will continue to do in my life and in my marriage and my friendships.